My name is Kevin Penfold. I'm the parish director here at the Sacred Grace Inglewood. Thank you. Basically, that means I just get to hang out with people. I get to spend time, creating connection events and joining you and joining Nathan and joining everyone else here in this parish in ways to get connected to one another. And so we're really glad that you're here with us tonight. And I'm just really overjoyed to be able to share this passage with you. We're in a series of Psalms. We're going through the Psalms of Asaph. Asaph was a worship leader, and he would write songs and psalms for the people in Israel. And so we're going through some of those that he wrote. And so tonight we're going to be in Psalm 74. Last week, Nathan did a fantastic job of leading us through a psalm and really showing us how we are connected to the biblical text and showing us how the problems of the people in ancient Israel can often be so connected and so the same as the problems for us today in modern America. He was showing us how the greed and the power hungriness that the people in ancient Israel had is just so similar sometimes to our own. I know that in my life sometimes I can have that same sort of desire, that same sort of feeling and need for power. And Nathan did a great job of showing the real connectedness and how we are often the same as the people in ancient Israel. Tonight I'd like to do the exact opposite of that. Tonight I would like to explore just a little bit about how the people in ancient Israel are so different from us. About how the people in ancient Israel lived lives that were just so different from the lives that we live. How, more than 2,000 years of separation can really have a difference in culture. How it can have a difference in story, in the images that we use, in the beliefs that we have, and the understandings we have of the universe and of our daily lives. And so tonight I'd like to explore that just a little bit with you. I must admit, though, that I've been warned to not do this. Not by Nathan or by Jared or anyone here at the Sacred Grace. If one of them told me to not do this, I would probably listen, But I've been told this by well-meaning pastors and well-meaning professors to not talk about the intricacies or not talk about how foreign the Bible is. Because I've been told that if you talk about how foreign the Bible is, how the people in ancient Israel and the people of the Bible are so different from us, then it can disconnect people from the text. And, if you're preaching to someone who maybe knows a little bit about the Bible or maybe knows not that much about the Bible, then telling them that they're reading an ancient text that's foreign to them might make them not want to read it anymore. And I understand where they're coming from. And I know that I've maybe felt that way sometimes as well. But I don't think that we can approach the text and just think that it's the same for them as it is often for us. And I don't agree that we can just say that the Bible is easy to understand and we can just pick it up and read it and understand everything about it. Now, hear me, I definitely do believe that we can pick up the Bible and we can read it and we can understand its truths and we can understand what it's pointing to, and it's pointing to Jesus. But I think that there's a lot of things that we can often miss if we just pick it up and we don't think about the context that it comes from. I'm not the person that Psalm 74 was written to. Psalm 74 was written to a specific group of people, and you and me, we just get to pick it up and we get to listen in. And so I feel like there's two sides of the coin. One side of the coin is that we can pick up the Bible and we can understand truths from it and that our lives can grow. I've had that experience in my life, and I've seen that in other people's lives as well. But I feel like the other side of the coin is that there's a deeper part of the text that we can dig into if we understand the cultural and historical context. So I believe that both the Bible is clear in what it means to communicate, but that there's something more that we can get from it. And I'd like to show you just a few examples of how the life and culture of the people in ancient Israel is so different from our own. This psalm was likely written a little more than 2,500 years ago. And to show just how different the world that they lived in compared to ours, I'd like to just give you a few facts. This psalm was written about 200 years before the magnetic compass was invented, 400 years before paper was invented, and roughly 1,600 years before the first eyeglasses were invented. I probably would have had a pretty tough time reading at that point. It was written about 300 years before Greek astronomers first proved that the earth was spherical. It was written roughly 2,000 years before the scientific method was first used and before it was widely accepted that we live in a heliocentric universe. And just for a peek into the daily life of an Israelite or Judean living in that area, at this time they most likely lived in mud brick homes with only 3 or 4 rooms with their extended family. They would cook there in the middle of the house, and they would sleep on the roof. I've had this experience a little bit with my family. For about the last 30 years, my family and extended family have been going to Lake Powell and staying on a very small houseboat. It's like 16 of us on this little tiny boat. There's only like 1 room, so we would all sleep up on top. We would cook together and eat together. And I'll tell you, by the end of that week, I was so ready for my own bed and my own house and to be just by myself. But that really goes to show how different our current lives are from the lives of the people that lived at this point. For them, that was just normal, everyday life. For me, I could barely get through those 5 or 6 days sometimes of living in such close quarters. And I'd like to read now through the passage of Psalm 74. And just let your eyes and your ears be open to the images, to the allusions, and the references that are specific to the audience that Asaph was writing this psalm to. These people were people who are now exiled from their land because an invading army had come in and destroyed their city of Jerusalem and destroyed their temple where they had worshiped God. And as I read, you will see images on the screen. These images are both old and new, and I hope that they evoke for you the emotions and ideas that this passage was meant to evoke as I read. "O God, why have you rejected us forever? Why does your anger smolder against the sheep of your pasture? Remember the nation you purchased long ago, the people of your inheritance whom you redeemed, Mount Zion where you dwelt. Turn your steps toward the everlasting ruins. All this destruction the enemy has brought on the sanctuary. Your foes roared in the place where you met with us. They set up their standards as signs. They behaved like men wielding axes to cut through the thicket of trees. They smashed all the carved paneling with their axes and hatchets. They burned your sanctuary to the ground. They defiled the dwelling place of your name. They said in their hearts, we will crush them completely. They burned every place where God was worshipped in the land. We are given no signs from God. No prophets are left, and none of us know how long this will be. How long will the enemy mock you, God? Will the foe revile your name forever? Why do you hold back your hand, your right hand? Take it from the folds of your garment and destroy them. But God is my king from long ago. He brings salvation on the earth. It was you who split open the sea by your power and broke the heads of monsters in the waters. It was you who crushed the heads of Leviathan and gave it as food to the creatures of the desert. It was you who opened up springs and streams. You dried up the ever-flowing rivers. The day is yours, and yours also the night. You established the sun and the moon. It was you who set all the boundaries of the earth. You made both summer and winter. Remember how the enemy has mocked you, Lord, how foolish people have reviled your name. Do not hand over the life of your dove to wild beasts. Do not forget the lives of your afflicted people forever. I have regarded your covenant, because haunts of violence fill the dark places of the land. Do not let the oppressed retreat in disgrace. May the poor and needy praise your name. Rise up, O God, and defend your cause. Remember how fools mock you all day long. Do not ignore the clamor of your adversaries, the uproar of your enemies, which rises continually. This is the word of the Lord. I assume that in there were some images, both visual images, which I've shown on the screen, but also images that are evoked by Asaph, the writer, that aren't quite ordinary to us. Things like Leviathan and such. This isn't really the way that we talk. It's not really the way that we communicate. I'm sure if you were to sit down and, write a letter to your parents or something like that, this isn't really the way that you would talk, and these aren't the images that you would use. But I want to dig into this text and see what are these images and why is Asaph choosing to use them. So Asaph begins by asking God why he has sent the Babylonians to the temple and why they have come to destroy it and why they have come to take Jerusalem. "O God, why have you rejected us forever? Why does your anger smolder against the sheep of your pasture?" I'm mainly a visual as well as an audio learner, and so when I was studying for this passage and wanting to really learn it and take it in, I wanted to try to listen to it over and over and over again. And so I found a podcast where someone read through each and every psalm, and then I just put that on repeat on my phone, and I was just going to listen to it over and over and over again, and I felt like this would be helpful for me. It was not. And the reason why is because something felt very strange when I first started listening to this podcast episode, Psalm 74. And it was the tone that the guy was using. It was like cloyingly joyful. Like if you've seen Friends, it was like Phoebe. It was like Phoebe from Friends reading this psalm to me. It sounded a little bit like this. "Oh God, why have you rejected us forever? Why does your anger smolder against the sheep of your pasture?" And I just turned it off immediately. I was just like, no, this is not the tone that's supposed to be used to read this psalm. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not what the writer was thinking. This is not what the writer was intending. The temple has just been destroyed and brought down to ruins. It's been defiled with signs and idols of the enemy. It's been burned to the ground. Their city has been taken from them, and they are now exiled out of their land. Asaph is longing for answers as to why this has come upon them. He's longing for them, and he continues to lament the wickedness and the destruction that he has just witnessed. They've behaved like men wielding axes. They smashed all the carved paneling. This past 2 months, I've spent some time in our new place putting up a new wall in our bathroom. We took down the really old bathtub that was in there, and I put up a subway tile surround. I could not do this without the help of Dwayne and Alec, and I was entirely grateful to them and to my wife. But I'll tell you, when I walk in and I look at it, I don't really think of the other people who helped me put it up. I just kind of think man, that looks real good. My hands have created something quite extraordinary here. And when I'm looking at it, I can put my hand over the tiles and I know how beautiful they are. I know each intricate detail and the little parts where I messed up and then covered it up somehow. But if someone were to destroy it, my heart would be ripped out of my body. I would just feel so distraught. And I love that, the writer here, Asaph, isn't just lamenting the whole. He's not just lamenting the fact that the entire temple was ruined, but he's actually lamenting the small parts of it. He's lamenting the intricate details of it. He's lamenting that the carved paneling has been chopped down with hatchets and mallets. Now, it's from 2 Kings 21 that we read that it was the king of Judah, who's named Manasseh, that he was the most evil king in a line of extraordinarily evil kings. Manasseh, he brought idol worship to the people of God. He had slaves, and he even ended up sacrificing his own son to a foreign god. And there are many other disgraceful and terrible things that he did. But what all of these evil kings had in common is that they had prophets come to them and show them the way of God, show them how to follow the way of God, and then they just completely did the opposite of everything the prophets had said. Here in Psalm 74, Asaph desires for a prophet to come and to bring a sign from God, but there are no prophets left, and he doesn't know if there will ever be another sign of God's nearness. Asaph references the Red Sea, which God, through Moses, parted with his right hand, delivering the Israelite people and destroying their enemies. Asaph longs for the right hand of God to come once again, wiping out their enemies and setting them free from oppression. But it has not yet come. It was God who holds the power to both create and to destroy the monsters of the deep, stomping on the heads of sea creatures and serpents. This reference from Asaph is a multi-layered reference to many different places in the Bible. First, it's a reference back to Genesis 1, when God created the earth out of the formless void. It's a reference back to the prophetic word in Genesis 3, when God said that the heel of the son of the woman would come and strike the serpent and crush it. And it's even a reference to a metaphor that Isaiah uses in Isaiah 51, where Isaiah references Egypt and calls Egypt a deadly sea snake, and God comes and crushes it. So these are the sorts of ideas and images that Asaph is drawing upon. Asaph also reminds God that he is the one who created the sun and the moon, and the whole earth belongs to the Lord Almighty. But still, the people do not have their own land. The people of God, the ones who belong to him, don't even have their own plot of land, even though God's the one who's created it all. The people of God are meant to be in their land and to be a shining light of what a kingdom under Yahweh looks like. But once again, they've been pushed out. They were the people who were supposed to be image bearers, and they were supposed to worship God in their own land. Instead, they've become an exiled nation of people who once again have nothing to call their own. In desperation, Asaph is crying out to God and seeking his hand of security so that the people of God, who he calls the dove, would not be left alone and then devoured by wild beasts. He even points back to the covenant which was made between God and his people. And Asaph knows, obviously, that the people of God have broken this covenant over and over and over again. But Asaph comes to God and reminds him of the covenant anyway. He says, "Look, God, don't abandon your people. Do not let us be destroyed by our enemies." And again, Asaph is pictured longing for God's promise to come to them, for God's promise to be fulfilled, and to finally bring the king which they have needed to lead them into safety and into security. But God has not yet come and done that. Asaph ends with a final prayer of desperation and longing. "Rise up, O God, and defend your cause. Remember how fools mocked you all day long. Do not ignore the clamor of your adversaries, the uproar of your enemies, which rises continually." He is saying, God, I know that you despise evil. I know that you desire to look after the poor and the widow and the afflicted, but it doesn't seem like you're doing that right now. I know that that's your character, but I don't see it happening in front of me. Why does it seem like you no longer defend your people? Where's the leader that you promised us? The leader like David who would come and be our king. And that's how it ends. It ends with longing and with desperation. And this isn't all that unique or different from a lot of other things that we find in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures. So much of what is written about and prayed about and sung about is a longing for a relationship with God, relationship with others, and relationships with those people surrounding them to be returned to order. One of the main sources that I used when studying this text and trying to figure out the biblical history and the historical context that surrounds it are these videos created by a nonprofit group called the Bible Project. Their motto at the Bible Project is that the Bible is a unified story that leads to Jesus. It's been through watching their amazing short films and through listening to their podcast, as well as doing other research of my own outside, that I've come to be convinced of what they say, that the Bible truly is a unified story that leads and points to Jesus. For so much of my life, the Old Testament has been just like a group of stories of good people doing good things that I should try to emulate, or bad people doing bad things that I should try to stay away from as much as possible. Or the Old Testament has been used by some people through some 21st century lenses to try to view it as some sort of scientific textbook that tells them secrets to the universe and whatnot. I've found that both of these viewings of the Old Testament specifically and of the Bible as a whole are just shallow ways of seeing the Bible, and they don't truly get at the author's intent or reveal the overall story of the Bible to us. I've seen that the Bible is truly a unified story that leads to Jesus. The people of Israel longed for a temple that would be kept holy and pure, uncorrupted by idols and safe from swords. And Jesus became that perfect temple between God and humanity, the place where humanity and God would come and meet with one another. And it's through Jesus and the Spirit that our relationship with God is restored. The people of Israel longed for a king who would protect them and lead them without taking them astray. And Jesus became that king. And he now sits at the right hand of the Father, that right hand that Asaph was longing for and asking for. He now sits there at the right hand of the Father, and Jesus holds authority over all of heaven and earth. The people of Israel longed for peace with their enemies. They believed that this would come from some sort of warrior king who would lead them into battle and defeat their enemies. But instead what they got was Jesus. He came through and he came on a donkey. He ended up defeating the powers of sin and death through self-sacrifice and through being hoisted onto a cross. These two are the things that we long for as well. It's true that the worldview, beliefs, and stories that those in ancient Israel used were drastically different than the ones that we use today. And I think I've shown that just a little bit. But like I said earlier, it's two sides of a coin. We can see that their lives and their experiences are so much different than our own. We can also see that in many ways they have things that are so similar to our own. My feeling is that we cannot fully understand this ancient book without understanding those who wrote it. If any of you would like some more information on that or an ability to study on your own and see the historical and biblical context, then there's a few suggestions that I can make to you. You might already have a Bible that has a middle section, like the image on the screen, and that middle section, which I used to just always ignore because I didn't understand what it meant, are connections that the Bible is making in the verses that you're reading to other verses in the Bible that appear in other places. So when Asaph is writing this psalm and he's referencing something that's going on in Genesis or in another part of Psalms, then you can look there at that middle section and see what it is that it's being connected to. Another suggestion would be if you wanted to get a Bible that you don't already have, you could get some sort of study Bible, and that might be helpful for you as well. You can also use BibleGateway.com. It's something that I use if you don't have a Bible and don't want to buy one. That has all those references there for you as well. And then also I suggest the BibleProject.com. Their incredible short films have helped everyday people like you and me understand this unified story of the Bible. Their films are high quality, and it's created by a brilliant scholar and professor, and it's been really helpful for me seeing the Bible. As well as seeing the importance and the historical context of this passage, I hope that you've also seen tonight that in many ways we long for the same things that the Israelites did. We long for our relationship with God, that relationship which is up, to be restored and brought back into order, and it's through Jesus that we have that opportunity. We long for our relationships with one another, those relationships that we call in, to be free from jealousy, from gossip, from pride, and to be defined by love, care, and building one another up. And it's through the power of our Lord Jesus that that's able to be accomplished. And we long for our relationships with others, that which we call out, to be defined by self-sacrifice, by love of enemy, both of which are perfectly demonstrated by Jesus, who gave himself to bless the world.